Hello and welcome to Forever Olympics on Forever Sports for today's Olympic wrap. Looking back at the weekend as well as what transpired on today, day 9 of the Olympic Games, and things have not gone according to plan for Team South Africa, missing out on 2 potential medals that we thought were definitely possibilities. And I think one person, one athlete which really did pitch up, probably could have done a bit more, but was really close to medaling, and another which was a really big disappointment. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But basically, we're just going to be looking at what happened over the weekend, what we missed, how we're shaping up, and then sort of look at what we can expect to see in the next sort of day or two. So it all started on the weekend on Saturday morning, in the early hours of the morning, where in the athletics we saw Wendon now qualify for the semi-final, but then we saw some very disappointing results in the men's long jump qualification, with Cheswell Johnson in Group A, as well as Russell Samai, who was a potential medal hope and somebody who we'd rated quite highly. Both failed to qualify for the men's long jump final. Really, really frustrating when you think that Lua Mayonga 2 years ago, or 3-4 years ago in Rio 2016, was actually won a medal. And Russell Samai was someone who was expected to take that mantle and to try and sort of fly the South African long jump flag pretty high at this games, but just didn't manage to get it on the day. You could see it wasn't his day. A couple of no jumps, didn't particularly pitch up. You could see how disappointed he was in his efforts afterwards, knowing that he had this expectation that we were sort of hoping really to get more from him. But we then saw quite a good showing in the men's 100-meter heats, where Shaun Masangani, Gertli Atlela, as well as Akani Simbini all qualified for the semi-finals. I mean, to have 3 athletes in the 100-meter semi-finals is an incredible feat, and it just shows you that we are in very much the dawn of a sprinting era in South Africa. We've got more and more people going under a sub 10 in the 100 meter. We've got more and more people going sub 20 in the 200 meters. And hopefully that the likes of Akani Simbini and Wade van Niekerk, who have really put, and even something like Jabodwana, have really put South Africa sprinting on the map. And we will see our 200 meter athletes in action tomorrow. But elsewhere in the swimming, Emma Chelias actually broke her African record that she set in the heat in the semi-final with a 24.64 in the women's 50-meter freestyle. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough for her to qualify for the final. In the hockey, South Africa lost 4-3 as our women's team, where Marisa Murray, Erin Hunter was the captain, as well as Taryn Glasby, all managed to get on the score sheet. 4-3 is a very nice result for our women's hockey. We've been on the end of some big results in both the hockey and the water polo. Our team sports haven't been phenomenal, but I think the main thing that we need to focus on is the fact that these team sports are actually there and that they haven't been there in the past. And if we want to grow these team sports, if we want to compete, they've got to be playing high level intensity competitions all the time and consistently, which they currently aren't. So I think, we've seen with our men's hockey that they've put in some really, really big performances. Beating Germany was massive and kind of put us on the map, but we need to see more of that, because if we don't go to these competitions, if we don't get the exposure, we are never, ever going to compete at any sort of level. And then the final result on the weekend was our men's water polo then losing 28-5. And on Sunday was the end of the golf, where we had 2 athletes. Christian Bezuidenhout ended up finishing T16, so tied 16. He was 7 shots off the lead and 5 shots off being part of the bronze medal playoff. Gary Hicho, who we had high hopes, but sort of as he's burst into the scene, he quite struggled over the 4 days, and he ended up finishing tied 53, way back on an even par. In the athletics on Sunday, we saw Zakita Zene finish 5th in his heat in the 400 meters and not qualify. Wade van Niekerk finished 3rd in his heat and did qualify, and then Tapelo Pora also not finishing 5th, as did Zene, and also not qualifying. So Wade van Niekerk was our hope there in the semi-finals, and he was a major, probably the biggest medal hope in the team. But we'll talk about his performance today in a minute. And then the 100-meter final, Akani Simbini finishing 4th. He was the 4th fastest qualifier in the 100-meter final on Saturday, and then finished 4th on Sunday. And we'll talk about him in a bit as well. And then Tsukakwana Zazini finishing 6th in the semi-final for the 400-meter hurdles. So it was a bit of a disappointing day on the track, with having so many athletes and only 2 players, 2 big names going through. But it was those big names that we were really hoping were going to carry us to a potential medal. And that kind of all fell apart yesterday as well as today. So if we look at yesterday, in the water polo, the men's lost 24-9 in their final game of the games. But in the artistic swimming, we had Clarissa Johnston as well as Laura Strugnell, who finished last in the duet free routine preliminary. They'll be in action again, once again tomorrow. And then the athletics, We saw, as I said, we saw Sambini yesterday, um, finishing fourth, and I think that we need to talk a little about that because a lot of people he's got quite a lot of flack um, for his performance yesterday, and I think it's very unnecessary. I think at the end of the day, it's very disappointing that he didn't medal because he had everything he needed to medal, but he never looked like himself throughout the entire games. He was always out the blocks quite slowly and sort of having to make up a lot of ground. And at the end of the day, in an event that lasts less than 10 seconds, you cannot start slowly. And same thing in the final. If he had run his personal best, he would have got a silver medal. He would have tied the silver medal time. He would have had to run a personal best to win the gold, but I think he had it in him. But I don't think we ever saw Sambini running at the sort of potential and the heights that we know we could. And I think look, at the end of the day, he's the fourth fastest man in the world at the moment. It's one better than Rio 2016. So a lot of people will criticize him, but I think if you're looking at the games in general, there are far more issues, I think, with Team SA than the current Sambini. At the end of the day, 100 meters, whilst it's very frustrating that we could have had a 100-meter medal, and I think that he'll look back and think if he had been in a better sort of space, he could have and should have medaled. But that was probably one of the best performances we've seen from our team South Africa outside the two medalists and the three medals we got. To come fourth, to be hundredths of a second off a medal, it's still a really good performance. This is somebody who has a Commonwealth gold. And look, he's 27 years old, which means he could still potentially feature in the next Olympics. But, you did kind of feel this was a shot. And it's just so frustrating to see us come so close. But he's just, and I think the most frustrating thing is that if you look at him, he's just such a non-sprinter personality. When you think of sprinting being very, very high egos, very arrogant sort of people. I mean, you look at the person who won from Italy, and sprinters generally do have very larger than life personalities and tend to have a bit of a sort of nastier side where they can sometimes be quite unpleasant. And Sambini is such a quiet and reserved person, so likable. It would have been so nice to have seen somebody of that sort of color of that cloth to go and do something really special. And unfortunately couldn't. And much like today in athletics, Wade van NIEKERK finishing fifth in his semi-final, and a horrible, it's probably the worst thing I've ever seen him run. His start was, I think it was 0.2 seconds off the American on the inside of him. And then so he just ran a horrible race. He started really poorly and then sort of gunned it down the first sort of 100 or the second 100 because he felt he had to try and make up some time, and then his legs just gave up on him. And a really, really disappointing effort of fifth in the semi-final, our golden boy of athletics, our world record holder. He's run one of the best runs of all time in athletics history, not even 400-meter history. In athletics history, he's got one of the best races of all time. He's the fastest man ever over 400 meters, and he couldn't make the final. And I think that it's just that's where the frustration is coming, because we've gone from getting 10 medals in Rio back in 2016. We're currently sitting on 3 and 2 from the same person. Take away Tatiana Schumacher, and we've got 1 silver medal from Banter Weitendag, who wasn't even supposed to go to the Olympics. So we really haven't sort of stepped up and managed to sort of improve our performance in 2016. And you've got to sort of wonder, we've taken our biggest team, yes, but where are the issues? Where do the issues lie? Why are so many of our athletes struggling to make it count? Why are so many of our athletes really sort of struggling to sort of to compete? Because I think if you look at some of the other nations, there are certain nations who are producing athletes in very niche sports, and you've got to sit there thinking, why can't we do that? Why cannot we put the structures in place to really compete in some of the more niche sports? I mean, we've got countries like Bahrain, countries. I saw in Namibia in the women's 200 meters. They've got two women in the 200 meter semi-finals, and they both finished second in their heat. Really, really impressive performances. How can we not be sort of producing those sort of things? We've got 55 million people in this country, and yet we still sit there going like that, and we look like that sort of team from Africa who's got athletes who kind of compete, but I don't think we don't have the structures nor the funding in this place to be able to churn out world-class athletes in the same view, and really is something we've got to fix. We've been saying this for years and years and years. We're talking 20, 30 years, that Sascock is not doing enough. The other performance today, Wendenell finishing 7th in her semi-final for the 400 meter and also not qualifying. So the athletics, where we were really hoping to try and sneak maybe 2 or 3 medals, maybe even 4 if somebody put in a really amazing performance. We were thinking maybe Sabini could get a medal. If NIEKERK was a medal hope, Russell Samai was a potential medal hope, and then maybe a performance from the men's 4x100 meters, which we could still see. A lot of it, I think, hinges on Geoff Diatlela and the potential injury he had. But in terms of tomorrow, the people that can try and sort of put us back on the map and try and make a bit of a statement, we've got Joanne van Dijk, who will be in the women's javelin. She'll be in group B of qualification tomorrow. That takes place at 10 to 4 in the morning before the men's 200-meter heat. Now we've got 3 athletes running the heat. You've got Nasser Jamadwana, who's in heat 1. Which is at 4:05. We've then got Shaw Masangani, the youngster, the 20-year-old. He's in heat 2. And then Clarence Munyai, he's got one of the fastest times, his personal best, one of the fastest times in the entire lineup. With a 19:69, I think it is. He'll be in heat 7 at 10 to 5 in the morning. So it's actually worth waking up for those guys. They really, really are really exciting. Jamadwana was the sort of the person that put us on the map for 200 meters. But Clarence Munyai has come in the last couple of years. Still very, very young. I mean, I think he's about 23 now. He can run some very, very fast times, can Clarence Munyai, and I think he's a very, very exciting prospect. He's 23 years old. As I said, he's got a well under sub 20. One of the fastest 200-meter runners in the modern times in that event, and he's got the national record, stuff like that. So he's probably our biggest hope in that men's 200-meter, and we need to see more athletes. I think the more we see athletes in the big sports, in the big events, the 100 meters, the 200 meters, those sort of very glamorous events, the more likely we are to see more people want to start sort of moving towards them. But it's also important that we do well in the niche events so that you can think, well, if we can produce a sailor who can go on and win gold, why can't I go be a sailor and go on to be a gold? But we're not seeing enough of that. Tomorrow we'll also see men's climbing. We've got Chris Costa who'll be doing the speed qualification and the combined bouldering. That's at 10 and 11 o'clock tomorrow. And then finally, Michelle Weaver will be in action in the swimming marathon, which is a 10-kilometer swim tomorrow. So you can go keep an eye out on her on that. So hopefully we'll try and see a better performance on the track and in the athletic stadium in general tomorrow from Team South Africa. But it has been quite disappointing. The fact that we were probably hoping to be looking at 6, 7, maybe 8 medals. And we're going to probably look at this stage, we could be walking away with just 3, which is a really, really poor effort from the biggest team we've ever sent. So it's very, very frustrating at the moment. It's still, you don't want to come down hard on the athletes. I think some of them have really outdone themselves. The likes of Bianca Batenduck. Sambinho, I think, was, as I said, hundreds of a second away from a medal. But we've got to look at, I think wait for NIEKERK was very disappointing. I think our men's 7s were very disappointing. Russell Samai was very disappointing. Those sort of people who are very much medal hopes and didn't even come close. We're talking about going out in heats or going out in quarterfinals type thing. That's where really the disappointment comes in. But hopefully we'll see a better day tomorrow. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. My name is Steven. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll chat to you guys soon.